Hi everyone, welcome back to End Zone Scoop. I'm Liz, and joining me are my co-hosts Dayna and Shona. Today we're going to be talking about quite a few things. So we're going to talk about the recent mass firing at the Raiders, like what the heck, the potential of Josh Dobbs at the Vikings, and what on earth is going on at certain teams. So for those joining us live, we do have a chat function. So if you do have any questions or even just something to say during the show, then please drop that in. But first, like ladies, I always try and avoid this topic because, for the sake of our listeners, but we can't not talk about it. Like, what on earth is going on with the Seahawks?
I mean, to be fair, I think the Ravens are actually getting their shit together this season. And I think they're after paying Lamar what he wanted, I think he's happy as a clam. So I think it's all kind of gelling for them. Although every time I looked, it seemed to be Gino was either on his ass or the ball was like thrown miles over any receiver. So that was fun. But yeah, I don't actually think anything went wrong for the Seahawks. I think we need to appreciate the fact that the Ravens are just a good ass team.
They're great, yeah.
They are really good, and I think they could actually. I think that I'm going to tip them to do quite well in the playoffs. So I'm going for the Ravens.
I'm with you on that, actually. Yeah, I was thinking about that last night. I was thinking, do you know what? They could be, I hate to say it this early in the season, but they could be Super Bowl contenders.
They're not just contenders, they're favorites at this point. I literally, here's the thing, you guys. Here's the thing with the Baltimore Ravens.
They've about their business, I feel like. They've quietly gone about it. They've not been like, we're the favorites. This is what we're going to do. We're going to lay down each marker. They're just like, we're going to win this game. And we don't have to tell you we're going to win this game. We're just going to do that.
So interestingly, thing about the Ravens are the best team in football right now, and I don't think they're going to people who are like, oh, but the Eagles, oh, but the Chiefs, oh, but no. If you look at complete teams and the way they're playing, Lamar Jackson's playing at another MVP level year. Their defense is number one in the league. They are a complete balanced team, where the other teams obviously have their beatable moments. The Chiefs has showed us that in the last few weeks. The 49ers lost 3 in a row. The Eagles look great, but they don't look perfect. And so I think that we have to really kind of understand where the Ravens are at, but you also have to be a little honest about where the Seahawks are at right now. And to be honest with you, so the Seahawks, they are struggling mightily on offense and have been for the last few weeks. The interesting thing about it is it seems to be for different reasons each week. It's like they just can't get it together. But the people who want to just blame Gino, it's not just Gino's fault. The people who just want to blame Waldron, it's not just Waldron's fault, although he is a huge piece of it right now. They want to blame the offensive line. It's not just them. The blame goes around equally around the corner to all facets of the offense. But I think there's a couple of things that really stick out. The run game has to be utilized better. They're not running the ball. In the Browns game, they ran it 11 times in the first in the first half, twice in the second. And they also went and in this one, they think it was even less. I can't even remember. I think it was like 29 yards rushing or some ridiculous number. Waldron is completely mishandling this offense. And I think what it happens is that, do you remember, I know you guys remember back when the offensive line was so beat up, they had extra tight ends to come in and help with blocking. And Seattle weathered that storm beautifully. They've pulled all those tight ends off and they're falling apart. We need those tight ends. We need those 12, 13, 14 personnel to come back in. And so I think that that's really important. But what has happened is the defense was exhausted. They were on the field 3/4 of the game, and the Ravens are stupid good, and our offense is very questionable. So still the 5th seed right now, still not ready to give up on this team. But at the same time, there are some questions that have to be answered.
I think we have to appreciate as well. I still feel like the Seahawks are in a slight transition from the post Russell Wilson era. It's not like it's like, here they are and they've absolutely smashed it and they're back in the playoffs. I think you have to take a little step back and feel like, there is very worrying things we've seen over the last few weeks, but they're going to work it out, I feel like. And we have to respect where we are at the minute. I don't see us quite back there yet, but I think we could.
Agreed. This is what I said on Twitter, and I got a lot of positive and a lot of negative reaction. I'm like, tweet through it and throw it in the trash. This is not worth your effort. There's no sense in completely breaking down this game. It was a dumpster fire. Move on. On to next. On to the Commanders. We're going to pull Bill Belichick here. On to the Commanders.
Now, a few weeks ago, Dayna, you said, this was actually the beginning of the season, we said we'll start to know our teams by like week 4 to 6. And I know when we last spoke a week and a bit ago, that realistically it's probably more going to be like weeks 10 to 12. Like heading into week 10 now, do you think we're any further forward on knowing who the teams actually are?
No. Right? Like they're so, and we're going to talk about some of these roller coaster teams and these teams that are just been so confusing. You know, obviously there's some logical ones. So the Bengals were not who they were going to be at the beginning of the season because of Joe Burrow, right? He's now healthy. Last night on Sunday Night Football, we saw exactly who the Bengals are going to be, and they are going to be a problem, right? And you see that from a couple of other teams. The Eagles have been pretty consistent throughout the year, but then their problems kind of shift from one side of the ball to the other kind of regularly. The 49ers, who the hell knows who they are? And I love this addition by subtraction math that so many of these fan bases are doing right now. So the Seahawks losing to the Ravens does not make the 49ers better. The Bills losing to the Bengals does not make the Jets better. And these fan bases are like, look, we're a better team. You had nothing to do with that game. It has nothing to do with you. I don't understand that thought process at all. But I do think that we expected the cream to start to rise to the top. But then you have teams like Miami, who we thought were the cream, and now they're kind of floundering a little bit. So I still think that this is one of those seasons where it's anybody's game.
100%, because like I don't think there's any like there's not a massive standout for me. I feel like you know, every season you're like, oh my God, like last season, for instance, the Eagles were really hot and like they were, you know, trajecting ahead of most teams, you know, but they still ended up losing to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. But even the Chiefs are that you know, are a bit hot and cold this season as well. So I feel like the only team, and I'm probably gonna jinx them now, is probably the Ravens. But like I said, you know, like 10 minutes ago, they're quietly going about their business. They're not like in your face with it, and they're not like saying, "Yeah, we're gonna win the Super Bowl. We're gonna be in the Super Bowl." Blah blah blah. Even their fans are like quietly just enjoying how they're playing at the minute.
Yeah.
Yep. It's fun. It's fun. The unknown is fun. And I know that when your team is supposed to be one of the good ones, it's not so fun. No, but it actually is a lot of fun if you look at it over
Isn't it great seeing the Niners lose 3 weeks in a row?
Heartbreaking.
So sad, you know, because they were it this season. Yeah, you know, they were it. And now they were going to the Super Bowl and they were.
Hey, I was believing the hype. I was like, oh my God, yeah, I can see it. And now I'm like, oh well,
we'll see. That's just it. Any game will knock you down.
Literally,
and then now, this was on Twitter this morning that the Steelers, the Bengals, the Browns, and the Ravens, if the playoffs started today, all 4 teams would be in the AFC playoffs.
Wow,
that's how crazy this season is right now.
Like, yeah, I get three of them that you've mentioned. Yeah, I can see it. Steelers, for whatever reason, I just feel like they're a team I've barely heard of this season.
They keep pulling it out the end.
Mike Tomlin.
It's so true.
Just such a lovely head coach.
He can't lose. He just can't lose.
No.
So. Yeah.
So let's get into the Raiders then, because that's some big news that's happened this week. How do you see this? Firstly, I suppose, why do you think they've done it now? I mean, I suppose it's obvious in some ways, but I feel like it's normally a lot later in the season before, you know, big changes like that happen.
Well, I can tell you exactly why they did it. So obviously their record was not great, right? Like they were really struggling on these games. They were winning, you know, by a tight margin. They were getting, you know, they were losing. And this was supposed to be, you know, a huge year for them. So apparently there was a team meeting where the players were encouraged to air their grievances. What Josh McDaniels didn't realize is that he was the grievance, right? And so therefore it was a very volatile conversation. And what they did, what he did is he was not there. He had, let's see, what is that coach's name? I have it here somewhere. Hold on just 1 second. Sorry, let me get there. he had their current head coach, he was the running backs coach. I think it's Pierce. I think is his last name. I'm so sorry. I don't have it right in front of me. Josh had him be his stand-in. He was going to go in and you go and defend me to these players if they're mad at me. And what ended up happening was the speech that he gave in that meeting and the counsel he gave those players was so impressive to the players and the front office.
Antonio Pierce.
Thank you. I knew it was Pierce. I can remember his first name, Antonio Pierce. That Mark Davis was like, that's our head coach. That is not it. So what do? They fired the GM who's been there less than a year. I think that one was a little harsh. They fired Josh McDaniels, which they should have done at the end of last season because I can't stand Josh McDaniels. The Bill Belichick coaching tree is a disaster. Let's just put it that way. And so they fired it and they brought this guy in. And what did they do? They played like lights out this week. Now, granted, he was against the New York Giants, who are the disaster of the NFL right now.
Yeah.
But I think that what happened was the players actually got what they wanted. They went in and said, he is not our head coach. He does not know what he's doing. And I think Davante Adams had a lot to do with this, as he should. He is one of their stars. And they went in and said, we want to change. And Mark Davis is like, and I like my players better than my coach. You're out, kid. And it's worked out really well, at least so far. Now, that doesn't mean that Pierce is guaranteed to stay the head coach. Obviously, they'll go through a coaching search. They will have to go through a GM search. But what I'm hoping, and this is what my question to you guys, this is not new for the Raiders. Oh my God, how many coaches have to go through? And yet Gruden came in and then that was a disaster. Even before Gruden got kicked out for his horridly racist emails, he still was a terrible coach. They couldn't win anything.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be massive fundamental change. And I don't know that I trust that to happen with the current ownership. He's Al Davis's son. He's never going to give the team up, but they need to do something different.
I read an article from CBS, their NFL sports pages, and they said the firing was a shock in the sense you couldn't see the timing coming at this time of year. And I was like, I guess it's weird timing because it is the middle of the season. But I just don't understand why they didn't get rid of him, in postseason, because it was obvious it was a dumpster fire. It was not working, and I feel like, I should say, Dayna, maybe it was a bit harsh that they sacked the GM. But if you think of like the moves they've made since coming in, they've not really set the world alight with their trades. And I think that was a big reason as to why they potentially that the GM went as well. Davante Adams, I feel like, is going to still have a great season. He's not been, his numbers from last season is not as high, but he wanted out, and that was obviously wanted out. And you could see how depressed he was when he wasn't traded before the deadline.
And 4 teams inquired, and the Raiders said absolutely not, which made me realize that they knew they were firing everyone and needed to keep their stars to attract a new coach.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I feel like, if that's starting to happen, you can see that the system in the background's not working. And you know what? I've never been a fan of Josh McDaniels. I just haven't. I don't think I think he's a good team coach, as in he's good as an assistant.
He's a Belichick lackey who doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I can't stand him. I don't know why he bugs me so much.
He needs to just be with Belichick and not be in his own. That's what I mean. I think he should never be a head coach ever again. And if teams want to take it seriously, do not hire Josh McDaniels as your head coach. My advice.
The other thing I was thinking about the GM, I'm wondering if Davis wanted Josh gone, McDaniels gone at the end of the season, and the GM talked him into keeping him. And I'm wondering if that's why he said, okay, but this kid is on your head. So if this doesn't work out, this is on you too. And I'm wondering if maybe that conversation happened. And maybe that's why they let the GM go so quickly.
Yeah, it could be.
Yeah. I don't know. They're going to be better off for it. Raiders fans are thrilled. So,
the first quote that Antonio Pierce said is, he was like, "I was born a Raider." They're going to love that. That's what they want to hear. They want to hear someone passionate about their franchise.
Yeah.
Josh McDaniels is just like, I'm a Belichick guy. Come on, give me a head coach job. I can waltz it. Actually, mate, you can't. You're absolutely terrible, and you should never play call again.
You guys, one other thing about this. So there was a lot of conversation this week. Mike McDaniel, because there's so many McDaniels in coaching, but Mike McDaniel, the head coach of the Miami Dolphins, there was an article put out about him, and he was talking about his players and how he so believed in Tua, and he just kept telling him, "I believe in you." And I put out a tweet out there because I truly believe that Mike McDaniel reminds me a lot of Pete Carroll. He is a player's coach. He is someone who pumps up. And I got into a conversation with Lisa Johnson, who's over at Our Turf Football, and she's a Miami Dolphins fan. And she's like, yeah, that's my head coach, with a little smile on her face. I said, the thing of it is, it makes me feel like when these coaches are succeeding, the Belichick type hard ass coaches are starting to go away. And I'm wondering if we're going to see even more of a shift besides Carroll and McDaniels and McVay and, all of these other head coaches that are so player driven. And I think that will be kind of the hiring trend for a while. Old school mean guys are out.
I was going to say it's quite an interesting one. Like, this is more of a style, like a fashion style, if you will, actually. Let's go there. Yeah. It feels very much like you've got your coaches who are very old school, wear an oversized suit, and then you've got the McVays and the McDaniels of the world. Like, I have definitely noticed a style, but I think that's an age thing. Like, it's like the new generation coming through or something like that. But it's fascinating.
Yeah, but Pete Carroll's the oldest coach in the league.
But I personally think that there can only be one Bill Belichick. So why is people trying?
He's unique.
You can't be him. So stop trying to be him. Stop trying to adapt his, because there's only room for one Bill, in my opinion.
We don't need anymore.
Yeah, we don't need anymore. And also, like, that's how he's always been. That's who he is. That's how he's not sugarcoated around it. Like that, that's his style, and it's worked for him. Yeah. I think when you're in his team, not everyone, but when you're in his background team, they're like, oh, I can go to an NFL franchise and I'll just be Bill. And it doesn't work. Not in this day and age, people are more out there with their feelings, and people more out there with how the things are going about and projecting, like, for a team. Mm-hmm. I just don't think that works anymore.
Yeah.
It works for one person, Bill.
And what about, like, Mike Vrabel? There's like some talk about him recently, and having witnessed how he is in a press conference, it's very different to what I've seen with other coaches. He's definitely got a bit like, you could tell something, he doesn't give a shit. Like, he that's how he comes across in certain questions. Like, he literally couldn't, zero fucks given is literally how I would describe him. And I just kind of think, I mean, there's definitely been talk around him and the Titans for sure, but I don't know. It's really, like, odd when I see coaches like that, because the other coaches around the league that I've seen in these press conferences, they're very open to answering things. They're very, I would say, I suppose, positive as well. Like, they're talking about things in a good way instead of, I suppose, even like downplaying their own team. So I don't know. It's interesting, and obviously he's a former player as well, isn't he? So I don't know.
I think people find it frustrating. I mean, I'm just comparing it to there's a head coach in the Northeast that I cover for my full-time job, and he is very closed book, and he gives you very straight answers, and people find it boring, and people find it closed off. People like when their team is more open and more accessible. When they're so closed off, you're wondering if there's other things going on behind the scenes, and fans in particular get really frustrated by it.
Yeah.
So that's where I sit on it. I feel like, especially as an interviewer, when you get a head coach or a manager who's really open, it's great because you get great sound bites, you get great insight into the club. Whereas if you get somebody who's just constantly like, no, we played well. Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
I think there is a difference too between zero fucks given coach like the Lions, like Dan Campbell, or Vrabel, because Dan Campbell, he's going to tell you everything, and he's going to tell you exactly what he's thinking, and he's going to tell you, all the good and the bad, and he doesn't care what you think about it.
Yeah, that
is very different than you can keep asking me. I'm not going to tell you because I don't care what you think. There's a very big difference between that, and I think that we have seen that fans and players and media respond much better to the first, not the second.
Yeah, definitely.
That's what I was trying to come across. That was more articulate.
No, you're absolutely right. You were absolutely right. Yeah.
So we've talked about the Raiders. We've talked about the Seahawks. We talked a little bit about the Dolphins in terms of Mike McDaniels and things like that. Shona, I know you were keen to talk about the Bills, so you give it to us.
Well, how crazy is this? They're out of the playoff picture at the minute as things stand. They are not in the AFC playoff picture. They are 5-4. And I would have not have said this at the start of the season, that the Bills were not going to constantly be in the playoff picture. I feel like there's issues around their offense, and particularly around how they actually manage Josh Allen. Apparently, I was reading. It was actually Syracuse, so it's actually about this is Cincinnati, so Syracuse Post or whatever it's called. But like they were talking about how when Josh Allen is given the freedom to run the show without a huddle, they tend to score touchdowns because defenses can't keep up, and he's making the plays and doing the throws. But for the past few weeks, they've decided to do huddles. Now, I'm not saying this is this is the be all and end all. If they do no huddles, they're going to win games. I mean, teams can work that out, like the Bengals did. But I think from weeks 5 to 8, the Bills run no huddles and on 4 drives and finished all of them with touchdowns. Whereas like last week when they played Tampa, they had a no huddle in the first half and also scored a touchdown. But then they started with changing the tactics. I feel like they don't know what to do at the minute with their offense, and I feel like there's a lot going wrong with the Bills. But again, they don't have a great record against the Bengals, so I won't say like that's like the be all and end all. Like, they just don't have a good record in Cincinnati. They just don't. But they look less prepared. Like they just don't seem to know what to do when they're on the field. I feel like it's the same team, but it's just not where they are at the minute, like where they have been and where they're going to go. If they do make the playoffs, I don't think they're going to get far, which I wouldn't have said at the start of the season. You want this team to do well, like going to 4 Super Bowls and not winning. It's heartbreaking. And you think Josh Allen is their answer, but even he struggled this season. And I think that he's starting to look like, as Dayna said in the podcast before, the first season Josh Allen, which you don't want right? If you're trying to win the Super Bowl. There is still good things. Again, they've lost Von Miller, which is probably not.
He's back.
Oh, is he back?
He played last night.
Okay.
Well, but just back. I mean, he's only been back like 1 to 2 games.
Healthy. Yeah. We need him to be 100% healthy to win. The defense are still really good, but I think that the major issues for the Bills is what they're going to do on offense. Not to take anything away from the Bengals, though. Like Dayna said, Burrows is back in MVP contention for me. Like it may seem early, but he's like, yeah, I'm back to full strength following my calf injury. Watch me. So he's like, that's where he's at. So I think you can't write off the Bengals and how well they did. But they averaged 12.1 yards per play on the first drive, which ended in a touchdown, obviously in the game. But then afterwards, it was 3.3 yards and 6 carries for James Cook. Like they're just inconsistent, and but it's not inconsistent like game to game. It's within a game. So the first quarter they might be doing well, and the second quarter it's like they're a completely different team. I don't know where they're going to go. Is my answer.
Feels like they've struggled since London.
I think it's before London.
Even before that,
I do think so.
I think the whole season they've been like amazing or just not amazing. But it's so topsy-turvy that they're now out of the AFC playoff picture. It's insane. It's actually insane that they are not in the playoffs right now.
We I talked about this on another podcast. We named off some roller coaster teams, and the Bills were at the top of the conversation because you never know what you're going to get from them. The interesting thing is they in the press conference today, their head coach admitted they needed to go no huddle up tempo much faster than they did. And he didn't know why they didn't, which makes me think that he's needing to have a conversation with his offensive coordinator. Well, I mean, if your coordinator calls the plays, though, you're trusting him to do that, or maybe he won't trust him to do that anymore. Here's the interesting thing. I just feel like they can't get their footing, right? Like they can't figure out what is working for them. I see that in probably about 4 maybe even 5 teams around the NFL right now, is that the offense, it's like hot one day, or like you said, quarter to quarter, and then they just fall apart because they're either not sticking what they had, or they aren't changing to the adjustments the defense are making. Now, we have to give the Bengals credit. That first quarter was crazy between both of them. And I looked at my husband, I said, oh, it's going to be a shootout. This is going to be a good game. Like, I was all about it, right? And then what happened is that the Bills fell apart there for a while. Now, their defense adjusted. The Bills' defense adjusted and kind of slowed down the Bengals somewhat. But the Bills' offense never adjusted to what the Bills' defense was, or the Bengals' defense was giving them. And so that seems to be a common theme for a lot of these teams that are having these roller coaster seasons. Dallas was another one. Although they played great last night against the Eagles, we've seen weeks from them, they have not played well. So I think what is happening is we were such an offense-oriented league for so long, and we still are. Don't get me wrong. But I think the defenses are really stepping up this year, and it is screwing with some of these you see it with the Chiefs, you see it with Miami, you see it with everybody, that they're really screwing with the offenses on these high-powered teams. And they're like, wait, this has always worked before. What happened now? So we'll see in the second half of this season if those offenses get a little more creative to figure out ways to get these points on the board.
I mean, they tried to establish the run game in against the Bengals, and then all of a sudden they just ditched that, and I just feel like they don't know what play call to continue with. Like that's how I feel at the minute. They try and do one thing, and then they go, oh wait, that's not working. Let's quickly do something. It's like panic, panic buying.
Exactly.
And you can't panic in a game. If you want to use what works well for you guys, and use what works well for your quarterback, who is still dealing with an injury, right, a shoulder injury, so he's not going to be your Hail Mary at the minute. So you need to find out something that's working for you guys, and then move forward from there, and not panic change everything in a game.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And
Bills, I love you guys.
We're rooting for you, Bills.
I know, I really like they've been a team I've really enjoyed for the past few seasons, so it's a shame that they're not
struggling.
Yeah, that's it. They're not the way we're used to seeing them, but yeah, definitely.
Secretly loving the Ravens right now. Well, I'll keep that quiet.
That's easy to do.
Cool. Yeah.
The Ravens are always been a fun team.
Yeah, I think they've always been cool, right?
I liked Harbaugh as well. I like him too. He's the
good Harbaugh, not the evil.
He's so understated compared to his brother. I feel, he's completely understated. I feel anyway.
It's true.
Let's talk about the Vikings then. So, I mean, gosh, they're having, I feel like, really bad luck right now.
Yeah.
I mean,
fair
play, because Josh Dobbs has been, I thought he performed really, really well. And bless him, like, to essentially be in a huddle and probably not knowing your entire team and things like that, that's got to be, like, tough. So respect on the fact of how he performed, given the scenario.
He's the backup to the backup,
Right. Yep. You guys, I don't know. Do you guys know Josh Dobbs' whole story? He has gone from team to team to team to team. He was with the Browns, then the Giants. He went here, there, everywhere. He's been all over this league, bounced around. Was in the Browns training camp this year. The week before the season started, got traded to Arizona. Was Arizona their starting quarterback? And I love that people blamed him for them not winning when the rest of that team is a dumpster fire. Played pretty well, kept them in games, managed to score 24 points against the Ravens, something Seattle couldn't do, right? And so, was doing well. And then, boom, trade deadline, we're sending you to Minnesota. Packed up his stuff, got to Minnesota on last Thursday.
Yeah.
Didn't know the names of his teammates. He knew a couple of nicknames, had a 5-hour session on Friday to kind of power through their basic plays in case he should happen to have to come in case something happens, right? Never took a single snap with any of the first team at all during practice. Not once. Had never taken a snap from his center. First quarter comes of this game. Their rookie backup, whose name I have written down somewhere, but I don't know where.
Jaron Hall.
Concussion. First quarter. You're up, Mr. Dobbs. There's nobody else. He goes in there, has never taken a snap from the center, has never thrown a pass to a single one of his wide receivers, has not handed off to a running back, didn't know half their names. He was calling them by their numbers and didn't know the playbook because they didn't know the special plays that they had put in for the Falcons because he didn't need to know them, right?
Yeah.
So apparently through his headset, they are spoon feeding him plays. Okay, we're going to do this play, yell this, and this is what it is. And they are like literally every time the defense, you could see him scouring through the book, trying to learn this stuff in the last 22 seconds through a touchdown and won that game for them. It was an insane game. Now, sadly, it was going on at the same time as the Seahawks game. And I was live streaming the Seahawks game for PSF. So I didn't get to watch all of it, but I was trying to check in because I can't wait to go back and watch this game.
Yeah.
I love Josh Dobbs. I love his resolve. He's one of those players who's like, I don't care where I am. I just want to play and I'm going to give you 100%. And I have so much respect for them.
Yeah. Same.
I have a feeling he's going to start from now on for the rest of the season and hopefully plays as well. But they also are going to get Jefferson back. It's here pretty soon. And I think another couple games, but very soon, which will completely change the way that team is. I think the Vikings are still in the mix of it. I think they're still in the playoff picture right now, if I remember correctly when I looked. I would not count Skol out. I would not count them out.
No, I wouldn't either. I think we did jinx our poor Kirk Cousins though, Dayna. Like we finally praised him on Twitter.
I'll call you
guys.
if you want.
It's your fault.
Stop calling him beige, and then
so you guys.
Stopped calling him beige, and then he had a season-ending Achilles injury.
I'm so sorry. I'll call you beige again. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, you're back to beige, Kirk. Back to beige.
Beige is good.
But no, I was so happy. Like you're so happy with like a guy who doesn't get started quite a lot, and then to throw three touchdowns to to make sure your team wins against the Falcons, who seem to have figured it out, and we're like, look, this is easy. The rookie's not playing. He got concussion. Now it's the third guy. But Dobbs was like, no, I'm proving that I can be here. And I imagine playing and having all those calls in your ear.
Constant.
You hadn't been told beforehand. Maybe teams won't do that in the future. Maybe they'll sell all their quarterbacks the call.
He had the plays on his wrist too. And he would be like, they're saying this one. And one of the other players would say like, okay, so it's, a draw play or it's whatever. And he'll be like, okay, yeah, because if you know anything about play calling in the NFL, there are a lot of similarities. It's just different numbers, colors, whatever they're going to call it. But to not know that and have this be your third team, you've learned the culture. He deserves so much credit. And I love that he's getting praise and that team absolutely adores him. And to be like, oh, wait, I'm supposed to throw it to the guys in the purple. I mean, seriously, because the Falcons fans, the Falcon team had on their black jerseys, which the Cardinals had been wearing.
That's tough, isn't it? Yeah,
that's brilliant. That's so funny.
It's like purple and white. That's my team.
It's the purple team now. Got it.
Yeah, cracked me up. So good for him. Kudos for him. I think that's amazing.
Definitely. Yeah, big respect on that one.
Yeah. Anything else this weekend that caught your guys' eye? Other than there were a lot of bad games this weekend. It's gonna be
but I mean, we're a red zone household, so we don't get to watch games in full. But I really was quite enjoying the Bucs game. That was edge of seat shit. Yeah.
God loves CJ Stroud. I think we've praised him a lot on this show.
Yes.
Love him. Yeah.
What a guy! Like he, for sure, to me is like rookie of the year. He has been really impressive.
People are already saying that already.
Yeah. We broke all the rookie records this weekend. So
That's incredible, isn't it? Especially with the Texans. Like, that team needs some luck. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Then and this is it. This is their good route going forward.
Super impressive.
Definitely. Right, guys. Well, that is the end of this week's End Zone Scoop. For those who joined us, I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to be back every other Monday at 6:30 UK time, 1:30 Eastern time. So, make sure you subscribe and come along to one of our upcoming episodes. So, until next time, thanks for joining.